You don't marry a Yakuza boss, you aim at one. You are 7 years old the first time you understand that the world does not protect good people. It simply processes them. Your family runs a tofu shop in Naka Ward, Yokohama. 3 generations of cedar and soy milk and 4 a.m. mornings. Your father never missed a single one. Your mother knew every customer by name, by order, by the birthday of their youngest child. It is the safest place in the world, until it isn't. The fire starts at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. You wake up because the heat reaches your bedroom before the smoke does. Your mother wraps you in a wet blanket. She pushes you through a window onto the roof next door. She tells you to stay. She tells you she is going back for your father, she goes back, neither of them comes out. You sit on that roof and watch 3 generations turn to ash in 11 minutes. The fire department arrives too late. The report says electrical fault. There is no investigation. There is no justice, there is just you. A 7-year-old girl in a wet blanket learning the only lesson that will ever matter. The world does not protect good people. You simply have to become something the world is afraid of instead. You learn his name when you are 14. Not from a detective. Not from a confession. From a boy at school eating lunch too loudly, mentioning casually that the pachinko parlor on your old street was built after a Yakuza syndicate cleared the block. He says the name like it means nothing, Murakami Kenji. You write it in the back of your math notebook. Small. Clean. No circles. No underlines. Just ink on paper, quiet and permanent, the way a grave marker is quiet and permanent. You spend the next 4 years learning everything about him. Public libraries, newspaper archives, second-hand books on organized crime. You never take notes on loose paper. Everything lives in your memory, filed and sealed. Murakami Kenji. Mid-level enforcer turned Wakagashira. Number 2 of the Ishikawa Gumi. 41 years old. Unmarried. A specific hostess bar in Kawasaki. Suntory whiskey, neat, never more than 3 glasses. A scar on his left hand from a knife fight in his 20s. You know the shape of the man who killed your parents before you have ever stood in the same room as him. You leave the orphanage at 18 with a diploma, a small savings, and a plan so long that it would make a chess grandmaster nervous. You move to Kawasaki, you get a job at a flower shop 4 blocks from his bar. And you wait, you never walk into the bar. You simply exist near it. Patiently. Invisibly. The way a slow leak exists inside a wall before anyone notices the damage. You study ikebana. Traditional flower arrangement. You practice until your hands stop shaking and your compositions stop looking like effort and start looking like inevitability. The shop owner puts your arrangements in the window. Local businesses commission you. Restaurants. Hotel lobbies. The hostess bar, you deliver flowers every Thursday. You are polite. Professional. Invisible in the way service workers are invisible to powerful men. You see Murakami twice during deliveries. He does not see you. You are wallpaper. You are furniture. You are exactly where you need to be. The bar's mama notices your skill. She offers you a position. Not as a hostess. As the in-house floral decorator. You accept, now you are inside his world. Arranging flowers in the room where he drinks whiskey and discusses territory and debt and blood. You hear names. Numbers. Locations. You memorize everything the same way you memorized his name in that math notebook. Small. Clean. Permanent. 8 months later he notices you, not because you made yourself noticeable. Because you made yourself essential. Every room he enters smells like something worth staying in. One evening he asks the mama who is responsible. She points to you. He looks at you for the first time. He sees exactly what you spent 3 years designing him to see. He asks your name, you smile, and the trap closes. The wedding is traditional. 200 guests. A shrine in Kamakura. Half the room is Yakuza. The other half is politicians, business owners, and a retired police superintendent who toasts to your health without a trace of irony. His mother pulls you aside after the ceremony. She holds your hands. She says, take care of him. He is not as strong as he pretends. You nod. You smile. You think about your mother walking back into a burning building for a man who was also not as strong as he pretended. You move into his residence in Kawasaki. Polished wood floors. Painted screens. A garden maintained by a man who arrives at dawn and leaves before anyone wakes. Cameras at every entrance. 2 men at the gate around the clock. A housekeeper who reports your movements to his lieutenant without knowing that you know. You settle into the role with a discipline that impresses even the oldest members of the syndicate. You manage the household. You host dinners. You attend funerals. And in the Yakuza, there are always funerals. They call you the quiet wife. You begin in year 7. Small adjustments to his diet. Excessive sodium hidden in broths. Herbal compounds that elevate blood pressure when combined with alcohol. Subtle shifts in meal composition that accelerate arterial inflammation. You studied for 2 years before you started. You understand his cardiovascular system the way he understands territory. Every pressure point. Every vulnerability. Every pathway to collapse. He tells you one evening in the garden, holding your hand, that you are the only peace he has ever known. You pour his 3rd glass of whiskey, you say nothing. Because silence is not emptiness, silence is the sound of a debt being collected so slowly that the debtor never feels the blade until there is nothing left to save, and outside, the koi move through the pond. And the garden stays beautiful, and you smile, and the door closes. Year 15. That he collapses in the hallway outside the bedroom at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. You hear the sound before you see him. Not a crash. Just a slow, heavy slide against the wall. Like something that was always going to fall finally running out of reasons to stand, you call the ambulance. Your voice is calm. Your hands are steady. The paramedics arrive in 8 minutes. They work on him in your hallway while you stand in the doorway of your daughter's room watching Sakura sleep through all of it. The doctors call it a stroke. Cumulative result of years of poorly managed hypertension, inconsistent medication, chronic stress, lifestyle. Every word of their diagnosis is technically accurate, they just don't know that every contributing factor was curated by the woman sitting in the waiting room holding flowers she arranged herself. He survives, but the man who comes home from the hospital is not an oyabun. He is a patient. His speech is slow. His right side trembles. He cannot hold a sake cup without spilling. The syndicate fractures within months. Territories lost. Revenue collapsed. 2 factions split. Police raids begin that would never have been dared when he was strong. 40 years of criminal empire. Dissolved not by law enforcement. Not by rival gangs. By a woman who cooked dinner and arranged flowers and never once raised her voice. He sits in his wheelchair in the garden one evening watching the koi. He looks at you with those same curious eyes from the hostess bar. The eyes that never stopped believing you were the most honest thing in his life. He says, I never deserved you. You sit beside him. You pour his tea, you watch the koi move through the water. And somewhere inside the piano bench, your daughter's Yamaha upright, a journal sits in the dark addressed to your children telling them everything, the tofu shop. The fire. The name in the math notebook. The flower shop. The hostess bar. The courtship that was never a courtship. The meals that were never just meals. You write the last line, you close the journal. You place it back inside the bench, you close the lid. And for the first time in 20 years you feel nothing. Not relief. Not grief. Not victory, just silence. The same silence that started on a rooftop in Naka Ward when you were 7 years old, wrapped in a wet blanket, watching everything you loved become light and ash.it. Turns out that silence was never the beginning of your story. It was always the ending. Year 16. Your daughter finds the journal. Not because you were careless. Because Sakura is 17 now and she practices piano every Thursday, and one afternoon her sheet music slips inside the bench and her fingers find the edges of something that was never meant to be found this soon. You are in the kitchen when she walks in. She doesn't speak. She doesn't cry. She simply places the journal on the counter between you like a body at a crime scene and looks at you with eyes that are half yours and half his and completely destroyed. You look at the journal. You look at her, you say nothing, because there is nothing to say that the journal has not already said better. She asks one question. Just one. Did you ever love him? Asterisk. You think about 20 years of curated devotion. 20 years of poured tea and arranged flowers and whispered reassurances in the dark. 20 years of being the only peace a violent man ever knew. You think about your mother walking back into a burning building. You think about what love looks like when it lives inside a mission. You open your mouth. You close it. Sakura picks up the journal. She walks to her room. She locks the door. You stand in the kitchen listening to the silence on the other side of that door, and for the first time in 16 years your hands are not steady. The instrument of your revenge just became the wall between you and your daughter. And you realize that some weapons, once detonated, do not choose their targets carefully. Year 16. Night. You stand outside Sakura's door for 40 minutes. You do not knock. You walk back to the kitchen. You boil water. You make tea. You do not drink. You sit at the table where you have served 1,000 meals with 1,000 hidden intentions, and you feel the architecture of 20 years begin to shift beneath you like a floor that was never as solid as it looked. Your son Ren is 14. He does not know yet. He is in his room doing homework, loud and physical and completely unaware that the family he lives inside is a structure built on a grave. You can hear him through the wall. His chair scraping. His pen tapping. The small ordinary sounds of a child who still believes the world is what it appears to be. You were 7 when you stopped believing that. You wonder how long he has left. Your husband sleeps down the hall. His breathing is labored now even in rest. The man who once controlled 40 square kilometers of criminal territory cannot walk to the bathroom without assistance. You hired a night nurse 3 weeks ago. A quiet woman named Fujita who arrives at 9 and leaves at 6 and never asks questions. Nobody in this house asks questions anymore. Except Sakura. The next morning she comes to breakfast. She sits across from you. She eats in silence. She looks at you the way you once looked at Murakami across a hostess bar. Like she is memorizing everything. Like she is filing it away somewhere permanent. Like she is becoming something. You recognize the look immediately. Because you invented it, and for the first time in 20 years something moves inside your chest that is not strategy and not patience and not mission. It is fear, pure. Uncontrolled. Maternal. The most dangerous emotion you have ever felt, because you can survive anything except watching your daughter become you. Year 17. Sakura stops speaking to you in full sentences. Not out of anger. Out of study. She watches you the way a scientist watches a specimen, quiet, patient, cataloging every movement, every micro-expression, every pause between your words. You recognize the methodology because you built it yourself in a Catholic orphanage with nothing but time and grief and a name written in a math notebook. She is 17 years old and she is already becoming dangerous. You watch her watch you and say nothing. Ren still does not know. He is 15 now, loud and physical, his father's jaw and his father's laugh, completely unaware that the ground beneath his childhood is hollow. He visits his father every evening after school. He sits beside the wheelchair in the garden and talks about soccer and grades and a girl in his class named Yuki. Your husband listens with his good hand resting on Ren's shoulder, eyes soft, present in the way that only men who have lost everything finally learn to be present. You watch them from the kitchen window. You feel something you have no clean word for, not guilt. Not grief. Something older and heavier. The specific weight of a choice that was right and devastating simultaneously. One evening Sakura comes to you. She sits across the table. She places the journal between you again. She has read it so many times the spine has softened. She asks a different question this time, what do I do with this? Asterisk. You look at your daughter. 17 years old. His jaw. Your eyes. A mind that could dismantle empires if she chose to. You think carefully about your answer, because this moment is the one moment in 20 years where the wrong words could cause more destruction than everything else combined. You reach across the table. You close the journal with your hand. You say, asterisk, you live. That is what you do with it. You simply live. Asterisk. She looks at you for a long time, then she nods once. She picks up the journal, she walks to the kitchen sink. She burns it. You watch 20 years of truth turn to ash over a gas flame, and you think about a 7-year-old girl on a rooftop in Naka Ward watching everything she loved do exactly the same thing. History does not repeat itself. It simply finds quieter ways to burn.